I mean, want to be on open heaven. Amen? Amen. God, open up. So open up. Open up. The windows of heaven. Amen. Malachi 3:6. I am the Lord. I do not change. Yes. Therefore, you're not consumed, O sons of Jacob. Yet from the days of our fathers, you've gone away from my ordinance and have not kept them. Return to me, and I return to you, says the Lord of hosts. But you say, in what way shall we return? Will a man rob God? Yet you've robbed me. But you say, in what way have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. You curse with a curse, for you have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. And try me now in this, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour you out such a blessing, there be no room enough to receive it. Now rebuke the devourer for your sakes, so he will not destroy the fruit of your land, nor shall the vine fail to bear fruit for you in the field, says the Lord of hosts. And all the nations will call you blessed, for you will be delightful land, says the Lord of hosts. Now look at verse 10. It says, bring all the tithe to the storehouse. There will be food in my house. Try me now in this, says the Lord of hosts. If I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour for you out such a blessing, there's not enough room for you to receive it. Now I want you to go over to Genesis, the 14th chapter. Genesis 14th chapter. I'll read together. We'll read, and then you'll sit down and I'll teach. Genesis 4. Genesis 14. Genesis 14. Genesis 14, verse 18. Genesis 14, verse 18. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High. Blessed him and said, blessed be Abram, God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tithe of all. Now the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the persons and take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have raised my hand to the Lord God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. That would take nothing from a thread or sandal strap, or not take anything that's yours, lest you say, I've made you, Abram, rich, except with the young men have eaten, and a portion of men that went with me, Adnah, Ishkar, Memra, let them take their portion. Tell them to say, everything belongs to God. All things belong to him. He possesses heaven and earth. You want to make it simple? Say all and everything. Or everything and all. Next 4 months going to might get kind of rough sometimes. So, over the next few months, we're going to be talking about what it means about God's finances and our economy. What does it mean to be in God's finances and God's economy? Say God's economy. God's economy. There are four ways to give in the Bible. The tithe, the first fruit, the offering, and investment. Okay? Say tithe, first fruit, offering, it's called free will offering, and investment. Tithe, first fruit, free will offering, and investment. Second thing, God does not have you until God has what you have. You can say all with yourself how much you love the Lord and everything, but until God has what you have, he really don't have you. Okay? He really doesn't have you until he has what you have. Okay? And a lot of people, we got lip service, but we don't give God everything we have. But you don't understand, God already has everything that you have already. He just let us use it while we're here. Say all and everything belongs to God. Now, let me teach you a little bit. Tithe is 10%. We're going to talk about that a little bit for the next few weeks. But the first fruit offering is when you tell God, off the top, I'm going to give to you what I want to give to you before I give it to anybody else or use it for myself. Say first fruit. First fruit. And that happens in tithe and in offering. Free will offering is when you give according to how God has blessed you and how you want to give by grace. Say free will.
Free will.
And investment means when you put God's ministry the number one priority in your life, and it might be way and beyond anything you have. Let me explain this in the Bible. When Peter, James, and John and Andrew left everything they had, that was an investment. When Paul, he goes around as tent maker, but he gives up all of his income to do ministry, that's an investment. When, and I'm not trying to put myself in a category, but I'm giving you an example. When we're planning a ministry, the ones who plan a ministry, we're making an investment. In other words, if nobody comes to worship here at all, but if I want to build a ministry, all the finances got to come out of where? Out of my pocket. That's an investment. So that's why you got to understand about the Bible. There are people who give a tenth. Everybody's supposed to give a tenth. Everybody got to give a free will offering. Everyone has to learn how to give first fruit. But then some people make an investment in ministry. When you see people like T.D. Jakes and Joyce Myers and Creflo Dollar and Ivy Hilliard, and you say, well, and people talk about all the money they got in Benny Hinn, those people made an investment. Say investment. And a return on their investment give them all those big houses and jets and all that. Oh, you don't hear me? Yeah. Not because you want to live like that, but if God owns everything, say everything.
Everything. Yes.
The rapper ain't got the only one that got to have something. You don't hear me? And the basketball player and the football player, if they make an investment, come say God's economy, their return is going to be great. But nobody saw them when they had holes in their socks. Our Bishop Richard Prim, sat with T.D. Jakes in the 90s before he was anybody, sat in his house with holes in his socks. T.D. Jakes had holes in his socks because he was what? He was struggling. Lights being turned off. But now, look at him now. Yes. Not because you're trying to celebrate the man, but you who you elevate. Say God. Yes. When he builds a $32 million ministry, a building, a facility, that's God doing that. Come on. Say real people. But we don't look at God like that. We think the entertainer got to be the one that's balling and the one who's doing the comedy. And I'm not talking about balling this morning, but I'm talking about when you make an investment, they're going to return on your investment. Return on your investment. When we're so afraid to give God what belongs to him, we hold back what God say give him. Say tenth. All he asks for, all he requires is the what? The tenth. God says, I do not change. Say, God does not change.
God does not change.
He says, do not change, and therefore you're not consumed. He says, return back to me. He says, how can you return to me? He says, how will you return to me? He says, will a man rob God? God, how did I rob you? Did I put a gun on you? No. Did I pull a knife on you? Did I sneak into your house? No. What did I do? I held back what belonged to him. Say the tenth belongs to God. And it's not by the law, it's by covenant. Say covenant. Covenant. And that's what I want to teach on this morning. Say everything belongs to God. Yes. Go to Genesis 14. It doesn't start with Moses. If you go to Moses, you're going to be in trouble. Because if you go by Moses in the law, Moses says when you don't give the tithe, you know what you got to give God? How much interest you got to give God? Do you know how much interest you got to give God under the law? Somebody say 3%. 3%. No. Somebody say 6%. No. Somebody say let's get into what they do when they call predatory lending. Say 21%. No. You know what Leviticus says? When you don't give God a tithe, you give him 30% interest. Come on. Say, thank God for grace. How many say, I want to live? No, you don't want to live under the law. So I don't want to live under the law. I want to be under what? Grace. Because under the law in Leviticus, when you miss the tithe, you got to give God 30%. Good God Almighty, interest. That means now you got to give God 40. Anytime you get to mess with God at 40, you got trouble. Say 40. It rained for 40 days, what? And 40 nights, right? Yeah. And then you did what? What happened? Another time. Jesus was fasting in the wilderness for 40 days, what? And 40 nights. Huh? And then what? When Moses was on the mountain and the people were down there looking, it was what, for 40 days, what? And 40 nights. When you miss the tithe, you got to give God how much? 40%. That's 10% plus 30%. Oh, man. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I'm not under the law. I'm not under the law. Yes. Well, let me tell you what. Say covenant. Covenant. People say, we ain't supposed to tithe no more because we not under Moses. No. This is before Moses. Say faith. This is by faith. Look over to Abraham. Abram is following God. Abram goes out to fight a battle. It's Genesis the 14th chapter. And after the battle, guess who showed up? Melchizedek. You say, who is Melchizedek? Melchizedek is Jesus Christ. Do you understand that? I'm going to show you in Hebrews. Melchizedek is Jesus. And what did Melchizedek come with? What did Melchizedek come with? What it said? He came with what?
Bread and wine.
Bread and wine. That's how you know it's Jesus. Everything in the Old Testament points to the New Testament. It was a foreshadow. Didn't it say he came with bread and wine?
Yes.
Didn't it say that? And he came with bread and wine, and Abraham gave him a tithe of everything he had for his increase from that battle. It's the first encounter of Abraham having an increase. He had left his mother and father's house, and he had an increase, and he gave him a tenth of everything he had. You say, Pastor, how you know it's a tenth? Go to Hebrews. Go to Hebrews. I don't even know if this is even going to make it to the video because of how, we're teaching. We're teaching. We'll get it on there. Hebrews the 7th chapter. Hebrews 7th chapter, first verse. Hebrews 7 and 1. Say unopened heaven. Say under. Unopened heaven. What did God say? Say test me.
Test me.
In this. Try me in this. He say try me in this tithe. Only time God ever challenged us to try is when he said give him a tithe. He said test me in this. And see if I won't open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing I don't want to receive. Hey, Hebrews 7. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, God the Most High made Abraham, returning from the slaughter of the kings, and blessed him, to whom Abraham gave a what? A tenth part of the first, being translated king of righteousness, and also king of Salem, meaning king of peace. Who is the king of peace? Who is? Say Jesus. Jesus. King of peace. This Melchizedek was king of peace. Jesus Christ, he shows up, he brings bread and wine. And it says Abraham gave him what? A tenth part of all. Without father, without mother. This is Jesus. He had no father nor mother. He says, without genealogy, having beginning of days, nor end of life, but made like the Son of God, remains a priest continually. Now consider how great this man was to even the patriarch. Abraham gave a tenth of the spoils. He said he gave him a tenth of everything he had. This tithing is not under the law. Now here's what happened. Let me get all of this is gonna take 4 months, so let me get all of the mess out. The problem we have with church is about tithing is we've been taught so much wrong theology. First of all, some people say, I don't want to tithe because that means the preacher trying to get all the money. So what churches did was set up dues. There are no dues in the Bible. There's no dues in the Bible. Dues is for some club somewhere. We're not a club. So this is the house of God. Yes, you're not giving to man. You're giving it to who? God. Will a man rob the preacher? Will a man rob the pastor? Will a man rob who? God. God. We started with dues. And then one thing we say, okay, well, dues not going to work. Let's do quotas. Every family give $33 quota every Sunday. You know how we do this foolishness. No dues, no quota. Say tithe. Belongs to who? God. God. Tithe belongs to God. The tithe belongs to God. It don't belong to me. So guess what? When it comes to my hand, whether it comes in the form of a paycheck, whether it comes in the form of a direct deposit, whether it comes in the form of somebody giving me a gift, the first 10% off the top belongs to who? God. This is how my daddy taught us this. We were kids. He gave us $1. He said, now give me a dime back. Why? Because 10% belong to who? God. My uncles did not belong to church. They grew up in the church, but they knew they wasn't living right. They said they didn't want to play with God, but they knew about the principle of God. So my grandmother was the treasurer. You could see it wheel around every Friday or Saturday. They not come to church on Sunday. They wheel around to my grandmother's house and walk up in there and get a tithe. And they do what? Do they on Sunday? You can't find them nowhere. But they kept being blessed financially because why? They're working in the principle of what? Give it what God belongs. So it belongs to God. He says, guess what? He says, when you don't do it, the whole 100% will be cursed if you don't do the tithe. But if you do the tithe, the 90% will be blessed. How many want your 90% to be blessed? Amen. With the whole 100% being cursed, huh? Yes. That's I just read that. Didn't I read that? Yes. But we don't teach it because we're worried about if maybe, number one, we do the dues. Number two, we do the clothes. Number three, we're worried about what the preacher going to do with the money. But the preacher going to take the money, and the money ain't going to be spent right, and then God ain't going to like that. No. You give it to God, and whatever order. Some churches have the deacons that run all the business. Some churches have apostolic leadership where it's the ministers that run the business. Some churches have where it's a couple of pastors that run the business. Don't worry about how the business is being run. You worry about I'm giving it to God. And if you can't give it to a place where you can trust the people that's going to do right with it, then that's not where you need to be worshiping there anyway. Come on. Say if you can't trust the people, you shouldn't be worshiping there anyway, right? Say real people. You ought to be somewhere where you can trust the people for who they are and give God to the church is only the channel for God uses. Come on, say the church. He gave us a church. He didn't say go give it somewhere in some mailbox somewhere and he'll just pick up that hand and reach it out of there. No, he says give it to the church. Why? That there might be meat, say meat, in his house. Can I finish? Can I go a little bit? Aren't you glad you're not under the law? Amen. Under the law, guess what? You had a priest. Say priest. Priests, now these priests could be married. They wasn't like the Catholic priests. They could be married. But the priests live at the what? At the temple. And guess how the priest ate? By the tithe. Guess how the priest lived? By the what? He didn't have a house. His whole thing, meat in the soil. All the sons of Levi, all of them came there and everything, all the clothes they wore, everything it belonged to the what? The priests. So that's what it was. The tithe was for the priest. The free will offering was to build the building up. You see, the free will offering. And then they were making investments sometimes. When they got ready to build that tabernacle, Moses said, y'all quit bringing. Y'all have brought too much stuff. Come on. When Solomon built the temple, come on, there was so much investment. Tell you what, they said if that Solomon's temple was here today, it would be worth $1 billion. Do you understand that? But we don't understand that kind of concept because we're so worried about, oh, God, I got these bills to pay. But say, loose it. And see if God don't bless what you got. I don't know if y'all really believe this or not. Say real people. Real life. Real answers. I mean, you want to be on an open heaven. If we don't do it, God going to do what? Close. He said, test me and see if I don't what? Open what? The windows of heaven pour out a what? Blessing. You have no room to receive. How many want to be on an open heaven?